Wife cheated, used burner phone, got kicked out. Affair partner jailed, she's jobless. There are moments in life when trust is shattered beyond repair. When the person you trusted most betrays you in the most unimaginable way. I found myself facing this cruel reality when I discovered that my wife had been cheating on me. It wasn't just the affair itself that hurt. It was the level of deception. She went to great lengths to hide it, using a burner phone to communicate with her lover, thinking I would never find out. But I did. I was left questioning everything I thought I knew about her and our life together. What happened next was even more shocking. Her affair partner's actions led to an unexpected turn of events. The betrayal spiraled out of control, causing not just our marriage to end, but his life to crumble as well. As for my wife, her actions did not come without consequences. The reality she had built was about to fall apart completely. Stay tuned to find out how everything unfolded. I'd always thought I knew my wife inside and out. 6 years of marriage, 6 years of growing together, supporting each other, and building a life filled with memories. She was the woman I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. When we met, everything felt like destiny. She had this infectious smile that could light up a room, and an energy that drew me in from the start. From the very beginning, we had something special. At least that's what I thought. Our relationship was built on trust and communication. Two things I believed were the cornerstones of any successful marriage. No one could have told me that one day everything would come crashing down in an instant. But one night, everything changed. It was a normal evening at first, until I found something that would shatter the foundation of everything I thought was solid. It started when I noticed her phone on the kitchen counter, an unusual sight. She was usually glued to it, so seeing it left behind sparked my curiosity. I hesitated for a moment, questioning whether I should look, but the gnawing feeling in my gut made it impossible not to. I picked up the phone and opened it, hoping I would find nothing that would make me question our relationship. But instead, I found a chain of text messages with a name I didn't recognize. They weren't just casual exchanges either. These messages were filled with intimacy, affection, and secrecy. My heart sank. As I scrolled through the messages, it became clear my wife was having an affair. She had been hiding it from me, sneaking behind my back, using a burner phone to communicate with someone else. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. All I could think about in that moment was how I had been living in a lie, trusting someone who had been deceiving me for who knows how long. I felt as though the rug had been pulled out from under me, and the anger quickly followed the disbelief. How could she do this to me? How could the woman I trusted with my heart and soul betray me so thoroughly? Looking back, I realized that there had been signs I had ignored. Subtle changes in her behavior, late-night calls, disappearing for hours without explanation, a lack of interest in intimacy, and that coldness that began to grow between us. But I had brushed those feelings aside, convinced that our bond was stronger than anything. I told myself that it was just a phase, that she was going through something at work or dealing with stress, and that it would pass. I never suspected for a moment that there was another man involved. The thought seemed so far-fetched, so out of place in the life we had built. But the truth was undeniable now. She had been having an affair with this man for months, and not once did she even think to come clean to me. What hurt the most was not just the betrayal. It was the realization that she had kept this secret from me for so long. She had hidden it with such care, using a burner phone to avoid being caught. To think that I was so blind to what was happening behind my back made me feel like a fool. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about the discovery. I replayed every moment of our relationship in my head, trying to make sense of what went wrong. I asked myself the same questions over and over again. Had I missed the signs? Was there something I had done to drive her away? But no answers came. All I had was a deep, gnawing ache in my chest, the kind that only comes from realizing the person you love most in this world had been lying to you the entire time. And then came the moment I had to face her. The woman who had promised to love me, honor me, and cherish me had broken every single vow we had made. I had collected enough evidence to confront her, to finally get the truth. It wasn't easy, but I knew I couldn't let this go on any longer. I was done living in denial. I deserved better, and so did she. She deserved to face the consequences of her actions. The discovery of my wife's affair did not come all at once. It was more like a creeping suspicion that grew over time, a nagging feeling that something was off, even when everything appeared to be normal on the surface. It was a Tuesday evening when everything changed, when the small cracks that had started to form in our relationship suddenly became a full-on fracture. I came home after a long day at work, feeling worn out, but in a routine, ordinary way. The house was unusually quiet when I walked in. My wife, who would usually greet me with a smile or a casual, "How was your day?" was sitting on the couch, her attention fixated on her phone. At first, I thought it was nothing, but something about the atmosphere felt wrong, something that I could not quite explain. The air seemed tense, and there was an unease I couldn't shake. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that I was just imagining things. But it didn't feel right. I had learned over the years to trust my instincts, and in that moment, my gut was telling me something wasn't adding up. Our relationship had always been solid, or so I thought. The next few moments felt like they dragged on forever. I moved around the living room, gathering my things and setting down my bag, but my eyes couldn't help but glance back at her. Her focus was entirely on the phone, and she was so absorbed in whatever she was reading that she didn't even notice me watching her. It was almost as if there was a wall between us. I couldn't stand it any longer. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want to seem paranoid or accusatory. I wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but something felt off, and I needed answers. The phone on the couch sat there, within arm's reach, and I had never looked through it before. But tonight, something inside me changed. I could feel the tension in the room, the words unspoken between us, and I knew that it was time to know the truth. I didn't even hesitate. I picked up the phone, unlocked it without hesitation, I knew her code, and started scrolling through her messages. The seconds felt like minutes as I opened her messages, searching for anything unusual. At first, I found nothing out of the ordinary, just casual conversations with her friends, nothing alarming. But then I saw it. A message from a number I didn't recognize, a name that wasn't mine, and the words hit me like a brick. As I scrolled through the conversation, my heart dropped into my stomach. There were messages from the affair partner, each one more intimate than the last. They didn't speak in generalities or vague terms. They spoke like lovers. Each message felt like a punch in the chest, a constant reminder of my betrayal. There were references to secret dates, intimate moments, and plans to meet up in private. I could hardly believe what I was reading. I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting, that maybe this was just a misunderstanding, but as I kept reading, the truth became undeniable. There was no room for doubt. She had been seeing someone else for months, and they had even been in a hotel room together. I felt my world crumble around me as I realized the extent of her deceit. But it wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was the betrayal of trust, the realization that everything I had believed in was a lie. I thought I knew her, thought we had built something real together, but now I was left questioning everything. The lies were so carefully crafted that I hadn't even suspected a thing. I had trusted her with everything, my love, my life, my future, and in return, she had lied to me, hidden another man from me, and broken every promise we had made. The worst part was how casual it seemed to her. She didn't seem to be torn with guilt. There were no apologies, no regrets. The messages spoke of a future, of dreams they shared, and a relationship she clearly valued more than the one she had with me. I had been blindsided, deceived by someone I had given everything to. I felt a surge of anger mixed with heartbreak. I wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there, but something held me back. I could not find the words. I looked up at her, who had been quietly watching me the entire time. The silence between us was deafening. My hands trembled as I held the phone, still reading the messages, and her face seemed to pale as she realized what I had found. She didn't say anything at first, but I could see the guilt written all over her face. It was the moment of truth, the moment everything changed. I dropped the phone onto the couch, and my heart started to race. The weight of the situation was overwhelming. I couldn't speak. I didn't even know where to begin. The betrayal felt like it had gutted me. I had so many emotions swirling inside. Rage, hurt, confusion. But the one feeling that stood out the most was disbelief. This couldn't be happening. Not to me. Not to us. Finally, I managed to break the silence, though my voice was shaking with emotion. I didn't need to ask the obvious question. It was all right there in front of me. Her face was red with embarrassment, but there was something else there too, a kind of shame, a deep realization that the truth was now impossible to hide. Yet, she didn't immediately confess. Instead, she tried to avoid my gaze, as if she thought I wouldn't notice the obvious signs. She remained quiet for what felt like an eternity, but I knew what I had to do. I walked away from the couch, needing space to breathe, to think, to process. I didn't want to say anything I would regret. This wasn't the moment to let my emotions get the better of me, but inside, I felt like I was being torn apart. The discovery of her affair was a watershed moment for me. It shattered my trust in her, in our relationship, and in the life we had built together. The person I had once trusted above all others had betrayed me in the most intimate and painful way imaginable. But it wasn't just the affair itself that hurt. It was the loss of everything I thought we had. The plans for the future, the dreams we had talked about, all of it felt meaningless now. The moment the truth came out, it was as if a dark veil had been lifted, but what was revealed beneath it was even worse than I could have imagined. My wife sat there in silence, her guilt-heavy eyes never leaving mine, and I was left to confront the harsh reality of our relationship. In the days that followed, she did not offer the kind of apology I'd hoped for. Instead, she barely spoke. Her attempts at explaining herself were weak and hollow, as if she knew she had already destroyed any chance of redeeming herself. I sat down across from her, my emotions still raw from the shock of the discovery. The fact that she had been seeing someone else for months left me devastated, but what really burned was the thought that she had been living a double life, hiding it all so effortlessly. She didn't even seem remorseful at first. No tears, no desperate pleas for forgiveness. Just a woman who had gotten caught, and now had no choice but to face the consequences. I had expected this moment to feel like a confrontation, but it felt more like a cold exchange, an acknowledgement of betrayal that neither of us had ever wanted. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaky but defensive. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her eyes darting around the room as though searching for something that wasn't there. I felt like we were growing apart, and he made me feel special again. "I never wanted to hurt you." It sounded rehearsed, like a line she had prepared for weeks, perhaps hoping that it would somehow make everything better. Her words stung, but they didn't take away the pain of the betrayal. She had been cheating on me with a man who clearly meant something to her. This wasn't a fleeting mistake. This was a choice she made over and over again, each time without remorse. The most painful realization was that she had thought so little of our marriage, of our life together, that she could justify such actions in her mind. She spoke of the emotional distance between us, but I now realized that what she was calling distance had been her own emotional detachment, a detachment she had been feeding with lies and deceit. I needed more answers, though, and I knew that the only way I could get to the full truth was to confront the affair partner himself. It wasn't about revenge, it was about closure. I needed to know who this man was and what my wife had seen in him, so I set out to find him. It didn't take long. I tracked him down through the details and the messages she had carelessly left behind, piecing together the puzzle of their secret meetings and late-night texts. The more I dug, the clearer it became. She had been in a committed relationship with this man for far longer than I had realized, and he was no stranger to deceit either. It took me a couple of days to gather the courage, but I finally confronted him. I was seething with anger, not just at him, but at the betrayal he represented. When I showed up at his place, he acted surprised, but immediately knew why I was there. He didn't even try to deny it. In fact, he almost seemed relieved, as if he had been waiting for this moment, as if he had been expecting me to show up, demanding answers. "Look, man, I'm sorry," he said, but there was no genuine remorse in his voice. "I didn't mean to cause you trouble, but your wife, she's the one who wanted this." His words didn't surprise me. He had no regard for the life he had helped destroy. But what struck me even more was his casual attitude about it. This wasn't just some random fling. He was fully aware of the weight of what he was doing. He knew he was crossing a line, and he didn't care. All that mattered to him was his own satisfaction. After that encounter, I felt emptier than ever. My wife had chosen this man. She had willingly crossed a line, disregarding not only me, but also the vows we had made to each other. In the face of all of this, I finally found the clarity I had been seeking. There was no way I could continue with her. There was no chance of forgiveness when the damage ran this deep. She had shown me that her loyalty, her love, was conditional and easily thrown away. I couldn't trust her anymore, and I couldn't live a lie, pretending everything was fine when it was not. I filed for divorce shortly after. I wanted out of the toxic environment she had created, and the process, although difficult, felt like the right step forward. But that wasn't the end of her consequences. The affair partner, who had been living without care for the chaos he had caused, soon found himself in trouble with the law. I learned that he had been involved in some other shady dealings, and his actions caught up to him. Within weeks, he was arrested and jailed, paying the price for his role in all of this. Although his arrest did not bring me joy, it did serve as a reminder that life often has a way of catching up with those who think they can live above the consequences. As for my wife, her life unraveled quickly. With her affair exposed, the shock waves spread through her social circle. She had lost her job due to the scandal, and the friends who had once supported her now turned their backs. She had no one left but herself to blame. Her world collapsed as she faced the harsh consequences of her actions. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction in knowing that she had lost everything she had chosen over me. Her career, her reputation, and the life she had worked so hard to build. The days after everything came crashing down felt like a blur, as if time itself had lost its meaning. I was in shock, not because I didn't see the truth coming, but because of how deeply it had cut me. I had spent so long trying to hold onto something that was never truly mine to begin with. As the divorce proceedings unfolded, I realized just how much of my own life had been consumed by this toxic relationship, by the lies and deceit. I had poured everything into my marriage, and now, with it all in shambles, I had to rebuild. My friends and family rallied behind me, offering their support and strength. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone in this, though the pain of betrayal still weighed heavily on my heart. It was hard to face the reality that the person I had trusted most had turned out to be someone I barely recognized. But as the divorce finalized, I started to see a light at the end of the tunnel, a light I hadn't even known was there before. The hardest part was accepting the loss of what I thought we had, a relationship based on trust, love, and mutual respect. I thought we were building a life together, but she had been building a life of her own behind my back, and I'd been blind to it. This realization was a bitter pill to swallow, but it also served as a powerful lesson. I now understood the value of true trust and how quickly it could be destroyed. But more importantly, I understood the importance of self-respect and the strength that comes from standing up for myself. As my wife struggled to regain her footing after the scandal, I was moving forward step by step. I found myself rediscovering passions I had long neglected, investing time and energy into things that made me happy. The simple things in life, the things I had once overlooked, became a source of joy for me again. I took trips I had always dreamed of, but never had the courage to take. I started reading again, learning things I had put off for years. And, perhaps most importantly, I began to focus on my own mental and emotional well-being, healing from the scars of the past. My wife, on the other hand, was left with nothing. The affair partner's arrest had opened up a world of consequences for her. As much as I'd felt anger toward him for what he had done, I couldn't deny that his fall from grace mirrored her own. She had sacrificed everything, her career, her social circle, and her reputation, for a fleeting affair. There was no redemption for her in this, no way to undo what had been done. And as much as I would have liked to see her suffer, I knew that her own choices would haunt her far longer than anything I could do. She was now facing the consequences of her betrayal, and that was enough. Months passed, and I kept my distance from her, focusing only on my own growth. Eventually, I came to a place of forgiveness, not for her, but for myself. I forgave myself for the years I had spent in denial, for the moments I had sacrificed my own happiness for the sake of a relationship that was never truly healthy. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing her actions, but about releasing the bitterness and anger that had consumed me. It was about freeing myself from the past so that I could move forward without being weighed down by it. The day the divorce was finalized was a strange one. It felt like the end of a chapter, but also the beginning of a new one. I signed the papers, not with joy, but with a sense of relief. There was no more waiting, no more wondering. The nightmare was over, and it was time to look ahead, to focus on the future instead of the past. I had learned from the experience, and now I could apply those lessons to create a life that was truly mine, one where I could be free from the toxic hold of betrayal and rebuild the trust in myself that I had lost along the way. As for my wife, her life went in a different direction, one filled with the consequences of her own actions. The job she had lost was never replaced. Her friendships slowly dissolved as people turned away from her, unable to overlook the betrayal. I'm sure she felt the weight of her decisions, though whether or not she ever truly regretted them, I will never know. But in the end, that was no longer my concern. She was no longer a part of my life, and I was no longer shackled by the anger and hurt that had once consumed me. The journey to healing wasn't easy, but it was worth every step. I had come out of it stronger, wiser, and more aware of what I deserved in a relationship. The pain would never fully disappear, but I had learned to carry it with me, without letting it define me. It was no longer a wound that festered, but a scar that reminded me of my strength. And now, as I continue my journey, I am more focused than ever on building a future that is authentic, filled with love, trust, and happiness. The things I thought I'd lost forever, but have now found within myself. If you found this story captivating, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon so you never miss an update on new stories.